Hi, my name is Dr. Michael Batu, and I'm back. And today we're going to talk about equilibrium national income. In order for us to understand what we mean by equilibrium national income, I have to introduce you first to a concept which we call the aggregate expenditure function. Now, this aggregate expenditure function, we will call this AE, or the AE function. Okay, so AE. Now, for this video, I'm gonna introduce a very simple model of the economy, very simple, and aggregate expenditure is defined only by two elements: consumption and investment. So we're not gonna assume that there's government. We're not gonna assume that there's imports and exports. Pure simple model. So we're gonna assume that AE is determined by aggregate consumption and investment. Investment only. Okay, so AE is determined by aggregate consumption and investment only. So how would it look like? Well, since it's determined only by consumption and investment, then our AE should look like this, where C is our aggregate consumption expenditure, and I is our desired autonomous investment expenditure. So what I'm going to do is the following. I'm going to write our consumption function from the previous video. So we know that, so recall that our C is equal to C sub 0 plus BYD. And we assume that YD equals to Y. And I'm going to assume for this model that our investment is autonomous. I'm going to call this I equals to I sub 0. So it's called autonomous investment. Autonomous investment. Now, what do we mean by autonomous investment? So when we say autonomous investment, what I'm saying here is the following: that investment is not determined by the level of national income. Well, you know, it makes sense that investment is determined by national income. In fact, one can argue that as national income increases, investment should also increase. But to simplify matters for this video and then for our analysis, we're gonna assume that Y does not enter our investment. So in other words, our investments are independent of national income, to simplify matters. So we're gonna assume this to be constant. I equals I sub 0. So now what we're going to do is the following. We're going to combine all of this here and write our expression for aggregate expenditures. So, and I'm going to do that right here. So therefore, we have AE is equal to C plus I, and AE is equal to C sub 0 plus BY plus I sub 0. Remember this Y, we assume that YD equals Y right here. That's why I've written it as Y. So we're going to simplify this to look like this. AE is equal to C sub 0 plus I sub 0 plus BY. Here's something I want to tell you. This sum of C sub 0 and I sub 0 is called autonomous aggregate expenditures, or autonomous expenditures. Now, remember, C sub 0 is autonomous consumption. I sub 0 is autonomous investment. The sum of these two is what we call autonomous expenditures. These are expenditures that do not depend on Y. So in other words, even if your Y is 0, we still have our autonomous expenditures. Now, this B times Y, this is still what we call induced. induced expenditure. Okay, induced expenditure. Now, this B, remember, this B from the consumption function is called the marginal propensity to consume. But once it enters the AE function, it's now called something else. So economists call this B, once it enters AE, we call this marginal propensity to spend. Okay? Note the distinction, my friends. The B in AE is marginal propensity to spend. The B in the consumption function is marginal propensity to consume. Okay? And let's look again at the definition. Marginal propensity to consume is the amount of extra consumption our economy will receive if there is an increase in disposable income. In contrast, the marginal propensity to spend is the additional aggregate expenditure that our economy will have as a result of an increase in national income. So these two are defined differently because this now becomes the slope of the aggregate expenditure function, this B, while this B right here is the slope of the consumption function. So again, although both of them are written as B, once they're used in AE or in C, the definitions become different. So that concludes our video on this. And what I'm going to do next is we're going to have a numerical example.